Tonight, as you settle into your pillow and let the noise of the day fall away, imagine stepping quietly into a world where winter is not a decoration on shop windows or a fleeting shiver when you forget your scarf, but a force so ancient and so absolute that it presses itself into your bones. The moment the sun disappears, a world where the cold is not a mood but a visitor that enters uninvited through the walls, the roof, the very breath you exhale. And it is in that world, hushed, smoky, frost-kissed and dim, that medieval peasants somehow laid down their bodies and slept. Before we slip fully into that night, take a moment, if you feel like it, to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these slow, wandering stories. And if you want, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is right now, because I love knowing how far these late-night travels quietly reach. Now dim the lights, let your shoulders soften, and follow me into a cottage where survival is woven from rituals so small and so ordinary that they barely made it into the historical record, yet they kept entire families alive through winters that would turn most modern homes into cold, echoing shells within hours. You push open the creaking wooden door and feel the instant shift between the outside world, sharp, white, merciless, and the inside air, which is warmer only by degrees, warmer only because bodies and smoke and habit have willed it to be so. And as you step onto the uneven earth floor, you sense the cold following behind you like a curious stray animal trying to slip in before the latch closes. You press the door shut, fitting it into its frame with the familiar shove that every peasant knows by instinct, because a poorly closed door is not an inconvenience in winter but an enemy, a thief that steals warmth by the fistful. And you take a small second to push straw into one of the gaps where the wood warped last season, a tiny defense in a war fought every single night. The air inside is heavy with smoke, soft, slow, clinging smoke from a hearth that has no chimney in the modern sense, only a dark opening above the rafters that sometimes behaves, sometimes sulks, and you breathe it in the way someone breathes in a family secret, with acceptance rather than complaint, because this smoky haze is the price of having any warmth at all. Around you the cottage murmurs with quiet life, boots drying by the fire, giving off their sour smell, a wool cloak steaming faintly from melted snow, a child rubbing stiff fingers against their breath and muttering a sleepy protest, the soft crunch of someone settling onto straw bedding in the corner. You move closer to the hearth, crouching low so the faint heat actually reaches your hands, and feel the prickling sting as your fingers thaw one pulse at a time. And in this tiny flicker of warmth, you suddenly understand why historians insist that medieval people thought of fire as a living thing. It sulks, it tires, it rewards, it demands, and tonight it glows like a tired creature curled in its den, offering just enough heat to keep the night survivable. You let your eyes adjust to the half-dark, the walls gleaming with soot, the rafters low enough to touch, the straw stuffed into every crack, quivering with the wind's attempts to barge inside, and for a moment you simply stand there, feeling the cold stalking at the edges of the room, and the warmth defending itself inch by inch. Your sleeping place waits for you in the far corner, nothing more than a raised patch of packed earth, softened with straw and a rough wool blanket. But to a peasant in winter it holds the same promise a mattress does to you now, the promise that your body will loosen, your breath will slow, and sleep, whatever shape it chooses to take tonight, will eventually find you. And as you kneel beside the bedding, smoothing the straw, rubbing your stiff hands, listening to the rattle of branches outside, and the low hum of wind curling around the eaves, you begin to understand not only how peasants slept in freezing winters, but why their rituals were so stubborn, so slow, so sacred. You sit back on your heels beside that little island of straw and wool, and for a moment you simply watch the room breathe, the way the fire swells and settles, the way the smoke curls and thins, the way every person inside the cottage is already beginning their own quiet preparation for the long night ahead, because in a medieval winter no one simply goes to bed, they build their sleep layer by fragile layer. You start with your clothes, because in this world your first blanket is the one you wear on your skin, and you know from a lifetime of cold seasons that what you do in the next few minutes will decide whether you shiver your way into dawn or drift there more gently. So you sit cross-legged on the packed earth and begin the little ritual your parents and grandparents followed before you, unwrapping your outer cloak, shaking off the loose snow, hanging it on a peg where the lingering warmth of the hearth might dry it before morning, then checking each garment in turn like a craftsperson inspecting their tools. The under tunic of rough linen hangs against your skin, not soft by modern standards, but familiar in the way an old path is familiar. Every seam known, every worn patch a tiny map of past winters. Over it you smooth the woolen layer that has been mended so many times the repairs form their own pattern, a shy embroidery of survival, and as you tug the sleeves down over your wrists, you feel how the wool traps the small pockets of heat your body is already trying to make, each fibre catching warmth and refusing to let go. You pull on an extra pair of wool hose if you have them, or at least you double the fabric at your calves, knowing that the cold creeps up from the floor like a thief that prefers the smallest unguarded places. And while you work, you remember half-heard comments from the village priest about how inventories from distant manors show peasants owning far fewer clothes than modern people imagine, yet using them in endlessly inventive combinations, turning a single tunic into nightshirt, day wear, extra cover and folded pillow by simply changing how it was wrapped and layered. Someone near the wall is doing the same, their movements a mirror of yours in the dimness, and you hear the soft rasp of stiff cloth against skin, the little grunts of effort as fingers made clumsy by cold tug at laces and knots, and in that sound you feel a strange comfort, a reminder that in this kind of winter warmth is never an individual project, but a shared campaign. When you are satisfied that the layers against your body are thick enough to matter, but not so tight that they trap the damp of your own breath and sweat, you turn your attention to the bedding itself, because peasants do not sink into a waiting mattress. They shape their nest fresh every night, kneeling now to lift handfuls of straw and fluff them with small practiced motions, letting the stalks separate and breathe, letting air slide between them, so that when you finally lie down they will have just enough spring to ease your bones, just enough thickness to keep the earth from drinking all your heat. The straw crackles as you work, that dry, papery sound that belongs only to fields long harvested and barns long emptied, and the smell rises with it, a faint reminder of summer baked into each stalk, sun and dust and wide skies compressed into this one narrow corner of a winter cottage, and you feel your shoulders loosen a little as that scent reaches you, because even a ghost of warmth is still a kind of promise. If your family had a good harvest or good luck or both, this straw was changed not long ago, replaced before the damp seasons brought mold and insects, and as your fingers move through the bedding, you can tell by the way the pieces still feel firm and bright that someone cared enough to do this before the snow came. If not, you know which corners to avoid, which flattenings to supplement with a little extra bundle saved in the back, which lumps to beat gently with your fist until they surrender and soften. You remember stories shared at the communal oven of households that tucked dried herbs into their bedding, sprigs of rosemary, stems of mint, even humble wormwood, to ward off pests and lend a faint clean scent to the smoky air, and you think of the tiny cloth bundle your grandmother once used to hide under her head, insisting that it drew bad dreams away. Maybe you have something similar, maybe you only have the memory of it, but even the memory is a comfort as your hands move through the rustling straw. When the nest looks right to you, not luxurious but even and welcoming, you tug the rough linen sheet into place, smoothing it as if you were taming waves on a small sea, then spread the wool blanket over the top, noticing how its familiar weight immediately changes the mood of the corner from empty space to resting place, the way a cloak draped over your shoulders can turn simple existence into something almost gentle. Around you the cottage is slowly dimming into night behavior. A pot is moved closer to the ember glow to keep the contents from freezing, A small knife is slid under a folded cloth where hands will find it quickly in the morning. A jug is set near the door so water doesn't turn to ice before dawn. And each of these movements is as much part of the sleep ritual as the bedding itself, because peasants do not separate day and night. With the flick of a switch, they ease the household from one into the other like a parent lowering a child into water. When you finally lower yourself onto the bedding, you feel the first sharp surprise of contact, that brief, unforgiving kiss of cold, from straw and earth and wool that have sat all day in the chill, and your body protests for a heartbeat, every muscle tightening as if to recoil. But you have learned over many winters that this first shock is temporary, that if you curl in and hold your ground, your own body will begin to turn this rough platform into something that feels almost kind. So you tuck your knees towards your chest, making yourself smaller, more compact, letting your arms cross over your ribs like a shield, and you draw the blanket up until it gently presses against your chin, and in that curled shape, you begin to feel the first faint halo of warmth forming around you, thin as candlelight at first, then slowly thickening with each breath you exhale into the tiny cave beneath the covers. Your feet search for a patch of bedding that holds a little less cold, perhaps where someone else lay the night before, some ghost of their warmth still hiding deep in the straw, and when your toes find that slightly softer, slightly less biting place, you relax them there, grateful for the smallest advantage. The fire murmurs behind you, its light now a low orange whisper, rather than the bright chatter of earlier, and in that half-dark you listen to the cottage settle, as if it too were finding its sleeping posture, beams creaking, thatch shifting, a pan clicking as the metal cools, a faint movement behind the wall, where the animals adjust their weight in the stable, and all of these small sounds weave themselves into a kind of lullaby that has nothing to do with melody and everything to do with repetition and familiarity. You lie there awake for a while, not because sleep will not come, but because the transition from cold to almost comfort is a process you can feel in real time, warmth creeping slowly from your chest to your shoulders, from your shoulders to your arms, from your core down into your legs, and with each passing minute, the air beneath the blanket grows less sharp, less accusing, until at last it feels like an ally instead of a judge. At some point, almost without noticing when it happens, your thoughts loosen their grip on the day's chores, firewood and fodder, repairs and arguments and errands, and begin to wander sideways, drifting into that hazy grey place between waking and dreaming, where the line between memory and imagination softens, and you find yourself thinking not in sentences but in images. A field under snow, a row of footprints glowing in the moonlight, the steam rising from a cow's breath in the crisp air, the flicker of the Virgin's candle on the church altar, all of it passing slowly behind your closed eyes, like scenes in a story you're not quite telling yourself. You are not alone in this half-drifting state. If you listen carefully, you can hear the change in other people's breathing too. A cousin's exhale becoming slower and deeper, a grandparent releasing a soft sigh that seems to empty the last of their waking worries into the shadows, a child's short, rapid breaths beginning to even out into a gentle rhythm. Together, these separate sounds melt into one soft background pulse, as if the whole cottage had become a single great sleeping creature. For medieval peasants, sleep itself often comes in stages. A first descent, and then, hours later, a natural waking, a pause, and a second sinking into rest. But lying here at the beginning of the night, you are not thinking about patterns or medical treatises. You are thinking about the most basic truth of winter, that if you can make it through this one night, and then the next, and then the next after that, the season will eventually loosen its grip, and the bed that now smells of smoke and straw and damp wool will one day smell of sun-warmed dust again. Your eyelids grow heavier, your hands relax where they rest against your chest, your jaw unclenches, and the cold that seemed so sharp when you first came in has been pushed to the very edges of your awareness, still there, still real, but kept at bay by cloth and straw and the slow quiet furnace of your own body. Somewhere at the edge of your hearing, the wind changes direction and presses more firmly against the shutter, making it rattle once, twice before settling again, and you feel rather than see one of the sleepers closest to the door inch inward, seeking the center of the room where the air is fractionally warmer, and without really thinking about it, you shift a little too, making space in the crowded nest, adjusting the pattern of shared warmth, the way a flock of birds shifts its shape in the sky. This is how poor peasants sleep through freezing winters in the Middle Ages, not with thick walls and deep mattresses and quiet private rooms, but with rituals repeated so often they become part of the body's memory, with layers of fabric and straw and smoke and breath, with small acts of care folded into every movement, and with the stubborn, almost gentle refusal to let the cold have the last word. You settle deeper into the rough cradle of straw, feeling the warmth you've built begin to cling to your skin, a thin, fragile shell that grows stronger with every slow breath you release into the blanket. And just when your muscles begin to loosen, when the tightness behind your eyes softens into something hazy and slow, you feel the faintest shift in the bedding beside you, a gentle rustle, a tiny tremor, followed by the familiar weight of another body curling closer. It is not a surprise. It is not even a decision. It is simply what happens now, every winter night, in every household where warmth is not a luxury but a shared burden. A child nudges their cold toes against your calf, a searching little gesture that is both apology and request, and without opening your eyes you shift your legs to give them room, letting their small body fit into the curved space your own warmth has created. A moment later, someone else adjusts behind you, sliding closer, their breath warmer now that sleep has softened it, and their presence seals the last tiny gap where cold air tried to slip in. This is not affection in the modern sense. This is survival arranged in layers of limbs and breath and quiet instinct. Historians call it group sleeping or family co-sleeping, but no peasant would give it a name. They would only shrug and say, "Of course we sleep together. It is winter." You feel the rhythm of the room shift as more bodies settle into their nighttime formation. A cousin's knee presses lightly against your back, an elder's blanket brushes your shoulder, a small hand, half asleep, half aware, rests briefly on your arm before sliding away. Each movement is tiny, unconscious, and yet it transforms the cold room into something gently alive, a tangle of warmth and breath, beating back the winter one slow exhalation at a time. The fire behind you sighs, a low settling sound like a creature curling into itself, and the embers cast a faint orange halo that outlines the shapes of those sleeping closest. A cheeklet gold then fading into shadow, a shoulder rising and falling under thick wool, a child's hair catching a spark of light before sinking into the dimness again. No one speaks. No one needs to. The warmth speaks for them. You shift a fraction, enough to bring your face closer to the blanket so your breath warms the little pocket of air beneath it. The child beside you murmurs something soft, indistinct, a dream fragment that evaporates as soon as it leaves their lips. Someone farther away emits a gentle snore, rhythmic and oddly comforting, marking time like a sleepy drum. The cottage itself seems to notice the new distribution of heat. The air thickens, the frost on the rafters melts just slightly, trickling into the straw with tiny sighs. The cold still presses at the walls and pokes through the gaps, but it no longer rules the room. It circles at the edges, frustrated, kept out by nothing more than bodies stubbornly refusing to freeze. You draw the blanket up to your chin and feel the warmth seep down your spine. A thought floats through your mind, one you've heard whispered by travelling scribes, that medieval households often slept in human bundles during winter, not out of sentiment but out of necessity, each person's heat feeding the group until the interior temperature rose just enough to keep fingers and toes safe until dawn. You understand that now. You feel it happening in real time, the warmth gathering, spreading, linking person to person like a chain of small hearths, connected by breath instead of fire. The wind outside rises for a moment, brushing the cottage with a low humming pressure that makes the shutters tremble, but the sound only pushes you deeper into the nest of bodies, deeper into the slow drift of sleep. You can sense the heat from each person, slight differences in temperature, the soft pulse of their breath, the shifting weight as someone turns over, and all of it blends into a single steady warmth that seeps through your layers and into your bones. Your eyelids droop, heavy as wet wool. Your breathing sinks into the same rhythm as those around you. Your thoughts soften at the edges until they feel like snow melting under the first morning sun. This is how poor peasants slept through the worst winters. Not alone, not neatly, but together, a living, breathing circle of warmth in a world that froze everything else solid. You feel yourself slipping deeper, sliding toward the first true drop of sleep, when another presence begins to make itself known. Not a person, not a draft, but a gentle, rolling wave of warmth drifting through the wall behind your back. Animal warmth, steady, patient, unbothered by the cold. You lie still, letting that rolling wave of warmth seep slowly through the timber and packed clay behind your back, a kind of heat that feels different from human breath, broader, heavier, steadier, and as you shift just enough to press your shoulder a fraction closer to the wall, you sense the living presence on the other side, the slow rise and fall of a great animal's chest as it exhales into the dark stable, its breath turning to fog that glows faintly in the moonlight, slipping through slats and cracks. And you realize that this warmth, this quiet, unintentional gift, has been part of peasant sleep for centuries. A second hearth that never complains, never dims, never asks for more fuel than a pile of hay and a small space to stand. The scent that drifts through the cracks is faint but familiar, a blend of warm fur, dry dung, sweet hay, and the musky thickness of livestock breath. A scent that would wrinkle a nobleman's nose but comforts you in the same way a lullaby might comfort a child, because it is the scent of survival, of life pushing back against the winter, one warm body at a time. And as you breathe it in, you can almost imagine the cows and goats shifting in their stalls, stamping once, shuffling their hooves, settling into deeper sleep that radiates outward like a slow heartbeat through the wooden frame of the cottage. You remember hearing from an old cart driver, one of those restless wanderers who had visited more farms than a priest hears confessions, that in cruel winters families sometimes slept directly above the stable, stacking straw on a loft floor so thin you could hear the animals chewing beneath you. And although the idea had amused you then, making you picture a whole family dreaming to the rhythm of a cow's chewing or a goat's bleat, it makes perfect sense now, as the warmth washes gently up your spine in a way no dying hearth flame could manage, turning the cold that once felt like a predator into nothing more than a presence waiting outside the door. Someone beside you shifts, tugging the blanket upward and sending a ripple of warmth down your torso, and in that moment, the human heat and the animal heat meet around you, blending into a single envelope of gentle comfort, the kind that makes your bones loosen and your breath fall into long, slow waves that sink deeper through your chest each time you exhale. And for a few heartbeats you simply lie there, suspended between two worlds. The world of the sleepers pressed against you, and the world of the animals breathing beyond the wall, feeling held by both. The embers in the hearth whisper one last soft crackle, the kind that says the fire is too tired to keep speaking. And though its glow fades, you hardly notice, because the stable warmth drifting through the wall feels stronger than flame, as if the animals are sharing their deep, steady calm with you, anchoring you in a warmth made not from sparks and smoke but from bodies and breath, and the quiet endurance of creatures who do not fear the night. The cold outside the cottage presses harder for a moment, a low rolling gust that rattles the shutters and shakes a dusting of frost from the thatch, but the sound only makes you pull the blanket closer to your chin as your feet find a pocket of shared warmth beneath the tangle of limbs, and the child beside you instinctively nudges nearer, their small back radiating a fierce, surprising heat that blends with the warmth coming through the wall until it becomes impossible to tell where one source ends and the other begins. Your eyes grow heavier, your thoughts drifting like flakes caught in a slow wind, moving from one image to another without urgency. A cow lying in soft straw, steam rising from its flank, the muffled snort of a horse settling into its stall, the gentle clucking of chickens huddled on their roost, all of them contributing to the invisible shield that wraps your family tonight, and you feel your breathing sync with that imagined rhythm, your chest rising and falling in time with the larger, slower breath of the stable. The cottage groans softly as the temperature drops another degree, a sound that might have startled you in summer, but now feels like an old companion shifting its weight. And as the walls tremble, you feel the warmth from the animals pulse once more through the timber, a deep rolling comfort that reaches your spine, your ribs, your throat, until even the cold in your toes retreats in quiet resignation. You shift your hand under your cheek, letting your fingertips brush the straw beneath the blanket, and the rough texture grounds you just enough to stay aware of the moment, to feel the way the heat thickens around your body, to recognize that this warmth, this improbable softness in the dead of winter, is the combined work of humans and animals sharing a single breath of survival. Your eyelids flutter once, then again heavier each time, and you feel your body drifting toward a sleep that is deeper and slower than the one that touched you earlier, a sleep shaped not just by fatigue but by warmth earned through layers of ritual, bodies, animals, fire, straw, breath, and the stubborn determination to outlast the cold. You let your head sink a little deeper into the bedding, and allow the warmth from the animals to fold around your spine like a steady hand guiding you toward rest. And as the last fragments of wakefulness dissolve, you surrender to the gentle pulse of life on both sides of the wall, slipping into a sleep that belongs only to the coldest nights and the poorest homes, and yet feels richer than anything you have known. You drift in that deepening warmth, feeling the long, slow pull of sleep begin to claim your limbs, when your ears, tuned by habit to the smallest shifts in the night, start to catch the delicate tapestry of sounds that rise when a medieval cottage finally settles into its quiet winter breathing. And at first it is almost nothing, just the soft hush of bodies shifting against straw, the faint rasp of wool brushing wool, the muted thump of someone's heel adjusting under the blanket. But then your awareness stretches outward like a hand reaching into the dark, and the silence begins to bloom with tiny details. There is the barely there whisper of frost sliding down the thatch, tiny crystals letting go one by one as the faint warmth from inside melts the underside of the roof. The sound so light it reminds you of distant footsteps on powdery snow, and then, above your head, a faint scratch, scratch, scratch along the rafters, as some small creature, mouse, sparrow, or something equally forgettable, shifts in its own pocket of shelter, claiming its share of warmth in the beams, just as your family claims theirs below, creating an ecosystem of sleepers that includes far more than humans. From the stable wall at your back you hear a soft, slow exhale, long and humid, the unmistakable breath of a cow settling deeper into rest, followed by the quiet rustle of hay shifting beneath its weight, and the warmth that trickles through the wall seems to deepen with that sound, as if the animal's slow heartbeat radiates outward into the wooden frame, filling the tiny cracks with comfort mere embers could never provide. A chicken gives a faint cluck-like murmur, the sound almost dreamlike, then goes silent again, as if the bird too has been drawn into the long, slow rhythm of winter sleep. Someone near the door coughs, a small, dry sound softened by wool and distance, and you listen to the way the cottage absorbs it, the way the walls swallow the noise until it becomes part of the room's breathing, and you marvel again at how every sound in this place feels both personal and collective, each noise belonging to you and everyone else in equal measure. A sleeper beside you exhales sharply, then mumbles something incoherent, their breath warm against your forearm for a moment, before they turn and the warmth shifts to a different part of the bedding. The window shutter taps faintly as the wind prods it, not enough to open it, just enough to make it flex and ease back like a tired heartbeat, and with each tap you imagine the darkness outside pressing against the cottage, trying to slip in and take back what little warmth you've managed to gather, yet failing each time because every crack is stuffed with cloth, every draught is blocked with straw, every body is huddled against another, forming a stubborn wall of living heat that winter cannot fully breach. You inhale, and your breath fills the small space beneath your blanket, warm and slightly smoky, carrying the scent of wool and faint herbs, and the earthy whisper of straw. And when you exhale, you hear the soft flutter of the blanket settling back into place, a tiny sound swallowed instantly by the larger hush of the room, a hush broken only by the slow shift of sleepers and the gentle chorus of the stable. A memory drifts through your mind, half dreamlike. Old villagers gathered near the communal oven, insisting that winter nights speak, if you know how to listen, that every creak foretells weather, every scratch reveals a story, every gust of wind carries the voice of something older than the village itself. And though you cannot tell whether the memory comforts you or simply lulls you further, you let the thought nestle into the quiet, adding its own layer to the soundscape around you. You let your awareness stretch farther still, catching the faint bark of a dog somewhere beyond the cottage, muffled by distance and snow, a brief alert before the animal curls back into itself, and that sound somehow makes the village feel closer, as though even in the vast frozen dark outside, life still glows like embers under heavy ash. You imagine neighbors sleeping in their own bundles, fires low, shutters rattling, animals breathing warmth into thin walls, and even without seeing them, you feel linked to all of them by the same winter ritual that repeats itself in every home. Your limbs grow heavier as the sounds sink deeper into your mind, each noise smoothing another part of you, until the night becomes a single low hum, a cradle of breath and wind and small restless creatures, and you realize that all these sounds, so faint, so easily lost, form a lullaby older than any song, the lullaby of people who learned to survive winters long before chimneys and featherbeds and doors that sealed tight against the cold. Your breath slows to match the rhythm of the cottage, your body softening into the warmth of the bedding, and you let the quiet soundscape wrap itself around your senses like an invisible blanket, until even the cold at the edges of the room feels distant and powerless. You feel your mind drift toward those small winter rituals almost before you consciously summon them, because every peasant who has survived more than a handful of cold seasons stores such tricks in the body, the way trees store sap, quietly, instinctively, ready to rise when needed. And as the cottage settles deeper into its midnight stillness, you shift slightly on your straw bedding, reaching under the blanket for the little cloth pouch you tucked there earlier, your fingers brushing its rough wool surface before closing around it, with the same familiarity someone today might reserve for a bedside lamp or a warm mug. You loosen the string and lift it just enough to breathe in its scent, a fragile blend of dried herbs gathered long before the first frost, the faint memory of summer sunlight preserved in the crumbled leaves, and as the smell reaches you, your mind steadies, not fully waking but smoothing itself, like warm water poured slowly over cold hands, and you remember without effort the lines written in the margins of old household notes. Herbs for comfort, herbs for breath, herbs for sleep, simple instructions from simple lives, yet powerful enough to ease the frayed edge where night meets worry. You crush a small pinch between your fingers, feeling the brittle stems surrender into powder, and the faint aroma rises into the smoky air, earthy, ghost-sweet, calm, and you let it linger in your nose before tucking the pouch back beneath your blanket, pressing it near your chest, so the fading warmth of your own body can coax more scent from the wool. The moment is tiny, almost invisible, but in a world where cold creeps into bones and smoke clings to lungs, these small comforts shape the difference between restless, shivering wakefulness and the deep sinking quiet of real sleep. A faint draught slides under the door, thin as a whisper, brushing your ankles with a cold so sharp it feels almost personal, and instinctively you pull the blanket higher, letting it settle closer around your shoulders, trusting the herbs, the warmth, the layers, and the bodies around you to keep the cold from climbing higher. You recall a plump baker at the autumn market laughing as she confessed she rubbed warm tallow into the soles of her feet before sleep, insisting it locked the warmth in like a cork on a jug. And though you smiled then, you find yourself wishing you had a little tallow now, if only to indulge in the idea of it. The sleeper beside you shifts again, their elbow grazing your ribs for a moment before settling, and you feel the soft surge of shared heat flow under the blanket, as their movement traps a small pocket of warm air that was drifting away. Someone farther across the room sighs deeply, one of those long winter exhales that seems to empty a week's worth of fatigue into the dark, and the sound relaxes you more than you expect, reminding you that winter, in its own quiet way, teaches people to breathe together. Your mind drifts to a strange charm mentioned by an elderly shepherd last spring, a tiny bundle of rowan twigs tied above the bed to keep nightmares away, and though you have no such charm tonight, the memory of it brings a faint smile behind your closed eyes, because even the thought of protective superstition feels like another layer of warmth against the cold. You imagine a rowan bundle hanging from the rafters now, swinging very slightly each time the wind nudges the roof, whispering soft promises into the winter air. The fire has burned down to a mere glow, red and faint as a fading memory, but you no longer rely on it for warmth. You feel the heat of your group bundle, holding firm around your torso, and the steady, animal warmth from the stable wall, soaking into your spine, and between those two gentle sources of heat, your body begins to unravel tension. One thread at a time, your shoulders dropping, your jaw unclenching, your hands softening into the straw beneath the blanket. You shift your hips and the straw responds, rustling in small papery sighs, adjusting itself to your shape the way water gently yields to a dipped hand, and as the familiar scent of straw rises, dusty, dry, somehow sweet in its simplicity, you feel a memory loosen inside you, something about an old woman raking her bedding every few nights to keep it airy. The image absurd yet oddly comforting, proof that even rough straw could be coaxed into kindness with the right touch. Your breaths grow slower, deeper, matching the rhythm of the sleepers around you, and in that steady chorus of inhalation and exhalation you feel a form of calm settle into the room. Not silence, but acceptance. The soft surrender of people who know the night is long but survivable, who trust their rituals and their remedies and each other to keep the cold at bay. The herbs you crushed earlier leave a gentle fragrance on your fingertips, and you bring your hand near your face just long enough to let the scent mix with the smoky wool smell of your blanket, creating a small pocket of comforting air that seems to cradle your thoughts, pulling them ever closer to the quiet edge where sleep begins. You sink deeper into that half-dream state, where thoughts stretch long and slow like shadows cast by a dying fire, and in that softened space your mind begins to drift toward the stories that winter always seems to stir, the quiet tales villagers whisper when the nights grow longest, tales that are not quite believed yet, never fully dismissed, because something about the cold makes even hardened skeptics imagine shapes in the darkness and voices in the wind. The room lies still around you, wrapped in warmth and smoky dimness, yet you sense a subtle shift in the air, a thickening of the darkness, not frightening but watchful, like the cottage itself is listening to the way you breathe, and you remember with a faint, drowsy smile the woodsman at last year's midwinter feast, swearing that the wind carried ancestral voices during the deepest cold, checking on sleepers, murmuring through shutters, nudging beams to remind the living that they were never entirely alone. You had laughed then, quietly, politely, but now, lying here with your eyes half closed and the faint smell of herbs still clinging to your fingertips, the idea feels less like superstition and more like comfort, because winter is easier to bear when you imagine it full of unseen guardians rather than empty, biting cold, and as the wind brushes against the shutters with a low tremor, tap, pause, tap, you could almost believe it is trying to speak in a language older than the village itself. A soft murmur rises beside you as someone shifts in their sleep, a dream word half formed on their lips before dissolving into breath, and that simple human sound pulls your attention back to the warmth around you, reminding you that the boundary between waking and dreaming means little on nights like this, when the mind slips in and out of the dark as gently as frost melts on a warm stone. Above you, a faint creak in the rafters makes you open your eyes for a moment, imagining a tiny household spirit shifting its weight on a beam, the kind old women swear knocks for breadcrumbs or warmth. You know, logically, it is only the wood shrinking in the cold, but the image of a small guardian perched above your family, legs dangling, head tilted, blinking its sleepy approval, makes your eyelids soften again, because in winter darkness even the impossible feels soothing, if it promises protection. The fire gives a tired sigh, a final exhale of warmth, before collapsing into deep red embers, and the shadows in the corners of the cottage grow longer, deeper, stretching in ways that look almost alive in the dimness. You watch vaguely as a crooked shape flickers against the far wall, a bend in the blanket pile or a hanging cloak, taking on the momentary silhouette of a hunched figure before dissolving back into the ordinary. And though your heart does not quicken, your imagination hums softly at the edges, entertained by its own quiet tricks. The wind outside rises again, brushing the walls with a low, wavering moan that sounds almost like a voice humming a distant tone, and your blanket instinctively tightens around your shoulders, as if responding to that ancient call. Someone near the hearth stirs abruptly, making the straw rustle in quick nervous shivers before they settle again, and you feel the warmth shift within the group, adjusting naturally, instinctively, until everyone is tucked back into their rightful place. Your eyes grow heavy again, and you let them close, the darkness behind your lids blending seamlessly with the darkness of the room, and in that perfect merging your mind begins drifting in slow, wandering loops, imagining the presence of winter watchers, figures made of frost or memory, drifting through the village, pausing at each cottage, leaning close to the thatch to listen to the sleepers inside, not with malice, but with the slow, quiet curiosity of something ancient. You inhale, calm and slow, and as your breath warms the small pocket of air beneath your blanket, you feel the cottage give one long, deep creak, as if settling its bones for the night, and somehow the sound feels like reassurance rather than warning, the old beams whispering that they have endured winters far worse than this one, their strength carved from decades of frost and summers and storms. Another faint tap echoes near the window shutter, not sharp, just soft enough to sound deliberate, and you imagine a spirit brushing past the wood, checking the latch, nudging the frame, making sure the cold stays outside, because even your sleepy mind knows that imagining benevolent watchers is far better than imagining the night empty and indifferent. You roll gently onto your other side, feeling the warmth of the animals through the wall slip across your back like a calm hand, steady and grounding, while the soft breathing of your family rises and falls around you in quiet waves that lull you toward a deeper, heavier calm. The shadows no longer seem to stretch toward you but retreat into the corners like tired pets, curling up for their own rest. With every slow blink your thoughts grow looser, drifting like steam from a hot bowl into cold air, rising into shapes you cannot name, dissolving before they settle, and in that dreamy haze the old stories lose their edges, becoming gentle companions rather than visitors to fear, until the only thing you feel is warmth and softness, and a sense of being held not just by blankets and bodies but by the night itself. Your breath slows, your shoulders sink, your thoughts blur like frost melting on a window. You lie still, hovering on the warm edge of sleep, when that tiny itch blooms again, first on your wrist, then fading, then returning a moment later on your shoulder, sharp enough to tug at your awareness, but not sharp enough to startle you, and you exhale through your nose with the tired acceptance of someone who has known this nightly routine all their life, because winter in a medieval cottage is never entirely peaceful, not when every creature, visible or invisible, seeks warmth wherever it can find it. You lift your hand beneath the blanket and scratch gently through your sleeve, the fabric rough against your skin, and the sensation softens into a small relief that spreads warmly across your arm. The straw rustles beneath you at the movement, shifting like a restless animal trying to settle into a more comfortable hollow, and for a moment you feel the faint tickle of another stork brushing your ribs, reminding you that this bedding, helpful as it is also alive with its own tiny world. You think of the early household notes scribbled by clerics and manor stewards, the ones that mention almost with resignation that every home is shared with the smallest of guests, and as your fingers move again in a slow, sleepy circle, you understand the truth of that line. Fleas in the wool, lice in the seams, mites in the straw, all drawn to the same warmth. Your body is fighting to preserve unwelcome but inevitable companions in a season where even pests are desperate for heat. A faint scurry in the thatch above your head makes you open one eye, not alarmed but mildly curious, and you picture a mouse winding its way through the rafters, soft-footed and unbothered by the cold, living its small life parallel to yours, nibbling at a forgotten grain kernel, or searching for a hidden corner where the winter wind cannot reach. The sound lasts only a moment before fading into the soft groan of the beams, yet it adds another thread to the living fabric of the night. The itch returns near your forearm, lighter this time, almost teasing, and you scratch again with slow patience, careful not to jostle the sleepers pressed against you. Someone behind you sighs warmly against your back, their breath creating a soft expanding cloud of heat beneath the shared blanket, and another person shifts their knee a little closer to your hip, the combined warmth making the small irritation on your skin feel less annoying and more like just another part of winter's texture. You recall a travelling peddler once boasting, half joking, half serious, that crushed fern leaves sprinkled into bedding kept pests away better than any charm or prayer, and for a moment you imagine the crisp green scent of fern mixing with the smoke and wool and warm animal breath that shape the smell of this cottage, an impossible luxury in a season where every herb is long gone or locked in storage. Yet the thought itself brings a small, drowsy comfort. You rub at the base of your neck where a faint tickle threatens to rise, and the warmth from your layered tunic helps chase the sensation away. Winter has trained your body well, taught you which spots to scratch softly, which to ignore, which to simply breathe through until the irritation passes, because reacting too much only wakes you and stirs the bedding, breaking the fragile bubble of warmth you and your family have worked so hard to create. The blanket shifts slightly as someone adjusts their weight, and the movement creates a tiny wave of warm air under the fabric, brushing your legs and easing the cold that had been nibbling at your toes. You curl them reflexively, tucking them deeper against another sleeper's calf, and the shared heat builds once more, until the cold air lurking beneath the bed retreats in quiet defeat. Somewhere near the hearth a soft clink echoes, the wooden ladle drying by the warm embers expands a little as the heat changes, a tiny sound that blends perfectly with the crackle of cooling ash and the faint hum of the wind outside, and instead of startling you, the noise reassures you, reminding you that even the objects in the room are settling into the night just as you are. The itching fades slowly, thread by thread, until it becomes just another background sensation, like the smoky air or the prickling straw or the faint shifting of animals through the wall, and your body relaxes again, surrendering to the warmth flowing around you, the warmth built from so many sources: fire, animals, breath, blankets, belief, that even a few stubborn pests cannot ruin it. Your eyelids grow heavy once more, your breathing deepens, and the warmth closes around you like a cocoon stitched from centuries of shared human habit. The cold outside growing weaker, the night growing softer, and as you hover on the edge of sleep, your thoughts blur and stretch, drifting toward the final ritual peasants relied on to survive the coldest nights. The way they shaped their minds, not just their beds, to welcome rest in a world that rarely gave it freely. You shift your weight gently, letting the last faint itch dissolve into the warmth around you, and as your body begins to slip back into that slow, velvety descent toward deeper sleep, your mind drifts toward the quietest, least spoken ritual of all, the ritual of shaping your own thoughts so that sleep can come, even in a place where cold claws at the walls, where smoke stings the eyes, where the straw scratches and pests wander, and the night stretches long enough to unsettle anyone who tries to face it alone. Every medieval villager knows, whether taught or simply absorbed through years of surviving winters, that the mind must be guided into rest just as carefully as the fire must be coaxed into embers. You cannot simply close your eyes and expect sleep to fall like a blanket, not in a world where danger lurks in the frost, where the darkness outside holds unseen things, where the cold itself feels alive, whispering along cracks and listening at the shutters. And so you learn to guide your thoughts the way a shepherd guides sheep, gently, slowly, always towards stillness. You draw a deep breath under the blanket, feeling the warm air fill your chest and settle like a small glowing coal behind your ribs, and you let it release in a slow exhale that softens your whole body. Your mind begins to drift to familiar images, the ones peasants have clung to for centuries when winter tries to steal sleep from them. The memory of harvest evenings when fields glowed gold beneath lowering suns, the scent of warm bread rising from the communal oven, the chatter of market voices drifting over cobblestones, the sound of flowing water in summer streams, all those warm season moments stored like embers in the mind, ready to be rekindled when the night grows too sharp. You can almost feel those memories warming you from within, adding their glow to the warmth of the bodies around you and the steady heat pulsing through the stable wall. The sound of sleepers breathing becomes a soft lull, a rhythm deeper than speech, and you let yourself fall into sync with it, each breath smoothing another edge of lingering tension, each exhale making your limbs feel heavier, softer, almost weightless against the straw. Your thoughts shift again, slower now, less like deliberate memories and more like drifting mist, shapes without edges, images without names, half-formed ideas merging and dissolving before you can grasp them. A flicker of summer sunlight reflecting on a river, the heavy hum of bees in a clover field, the quiet rustle of wheat, brushing your legs as you walk through a field at dusk. These images spiral gently, and your mind follows them as though wandering a familiar path that leads inevitably into sleep. Someone beside you murmurs in their dreams, a soft, childlike sound that fades almost instantly into deeper breathing, and the warmth pressed against your side grows slightly heavier as they sink further into rest. You can feel your own mind mirroring that descent, slipping from the conscious world into the quieter layers beneath, guided not by fear or worry but by habit, warmth, and the slow rituals of winter nights. The cottage creaks again, the old beams shifting as the cold outside tightens its grip on the wood, and instead of startling you, the sound feels like reassurance, the house settling itself into its own kind of slumber, keeping watch while the family within it releases their weight into the night. You imagine the structure as a living thing, old and loyal, built from timber cut by hands long gone, its walls seasoned by dozens of winters, each groan and whisper a promise that it has held through storms far worse than this. Your breathing becomes shallower now, not from tension but from ease, each inhale soft and steady, each exhale drifting like smoke into the bedding. The herbs you crushed earlier still linger faintly in the air around your face, a gentle reminder of summer warmth, and even the smoke curling above the embers seems to soothe rather than irritate, painting the dimness with slow-moving shapes that your eyes are too tired to follow. Your body feels heavy in the perfect way, heavy like something sinking into warm water, heavy like a blanket being laid over a tired mind, and the warmth from the stable animals pulses through your back with a slow, steady rhythm, like a deep heartbeat easing you downward. Your last coherent thoughts drift towards simple gratitude, not spoken, not even fully formed, but felt in the quiet warmth of your chest, for the layers that hold you, for the bodies beside you, for the animals beyond the wall, for the herbs crushed between your fingertips, for the straw cradling your bones, for all the small stubborn rituals that make sleep possible in a night like this. And as your mind loosens even further, hovering on the threshold where thought dissolves into dream, you feel the night reaching for you gently, patiently, like a hand lowering over a lantern flame. You drift deeper, balanced on that delicate ledge where wakefulness thins into dream, when you feel the warmth of the shared bedding shift in a subtle collective way, not from movement this time, but from something softer, something almost invisible, the quiet, synchronized surrender of every sleeper around you as their breathing deepens, thickens, and settles into the slow, unified rhythm of a household, finally giving itself fully to the night. It is a turning point you have felt many times before, a moment in winter nights when the entire cottage seems to exhale at once, as though the building, the people, and even the animals behind the wall have agreed to stop resisting the cold, and instead sink into the ancient instinct of survival through rest. The air grows warmer by a small but noticeable degree as bodies trapped under blankets emit their accumulated heat. The straw beneath you softens as it molds to the weight of stillness, and the darkness itself seems to thicken, becoming less like a void and more like a cradle. Your thoughts start dissolving into long, drifting stretches where meaning thins out. You feel the grazing edge of dream imagery, but it slips away before forming anything solid, leaving behind only the sensation of movement, soft, foggy, unrushed. Your body feels weighty, but in the way soil feels weighty on a seed, protected, muffled, safe. The warmth from the stable wall deepens, radiating like the slow breath of a sleeping giant, and your spine absorbs it with a gratitude so instinctive it barely registers as thought. The animals are settling too, their bodies quieting into their own rhythm. Occasional shifts of hooves on straw, the soft grunt of a cow adjusting its weight, the gentle flutter of a chicken settling its wings. These sounds blend with the human breathing around you, until the cottage feels like a single living organism with many hearts and many lungs, all resting together. Your eyelids twitch, a final signal of waking thoughts trying to hold their ground, but they have already lost. The tired muscles around your eyes loosen, your jaw drops slightly, relaxed. Your hands, once curled defensively under the blanket, now soften, fingers spreading gently into the straw, as though your body is finally convinced there is no more reason to resist the pull of rest. The cold that once crept at your ankles has retreated almost completely, driven back not by force but by the accumulated warmth of the group bundle and the stable animals. Even the draft sneaking beneath the door loses its teeth, reduced to a faint whisper brushing the floorboards rather than a biting intrusion. Somewhere beyond the cottage, the wind bruises itself against the thatch, sending a soft rumble through the roof. In your heavy-lidded awareness, the sound no longer feels like weather. It feels like a lullaby sung by the night itself, the old familiar voice winter uses to soothe those who have accepted its terms. A sleeper beside you inhales deeply, the blanket rising with their breath, then exhales with a low hum that warms the space beneath the wool. That warmth touches your ribs like a soft wave. You match their breathing without intending to, slipping unconsciously into synchronization, and the effect carries you downward another step, toward a place where conscious thought becomes too heavy to lift. The faint smell of crushed herbs lingers near your face, mixing with the smoky scent of the hearth, and the combined fragrance wraps itself around your senses like a blurry horizon separating waking from dream. Your mind tries to form one last thought, a simple acknowledgement of comfort, perhaps, or gratitude, or the vague awareness that you have finally reached the point where sleep cannot be postponed, but the thought unravels before it finishes forming, dissolving into something soft and formless. You are drifting now, further, deeper, carried not by exhaustion but by the careful work of every winter ritual you performed. The layering of clothes, the shaping of the straw bedding, the closing of the door, the tending of the embers, the herbal scent, the shared warmth, the steady breath of animals, each one a stitch in the fabric of the night, pulling you slowly, inevitably downward. Your breath grows slower, your limbs grow heavier, your thoughts become dim lights sinking beneath dark water. You hover on the edge of that final surrender, your mind almost weightless, when that soft shift reaches you, subtle as a fingertip on water, but enough for your drifting awareness to brush against it. At first it feels like nothing more than a disturbance in the straw, a faint rustle so gentle it could be wind slipping under the door, or a sleeper adjusting their foot, yet something in the texture of the sound makes your thoughts stir just enough to listen. You lie still, not fully waking, not fully dreaming, your breathing warm beneath the blanket, and you feel the slightest tremor beneath your hip, an almost imperceptible vibration, the kind that could belong to a mouse, darting through the straw, or even a beetle nudging its way into the warmer layers. In your half-sleep you do not recoil. Instead you absorb the sensation as just another thread in the tapestry of winter nights, one of the small inevitable companions that share the cottage's warmth with you. The micro-movement passes, melting into the larger hush of the room, and you let your mind sink again. But another sound rises faintly, a soft, rhythmic tapping from the rafters overhead, the sort of quiet, delicate pattern made by something small exploring the beams. It is not alarming. The sound belongs more to the regular living of winter than to any threat. The taps are spaced far apart, mild, curious, almost thoughtful. Perhaps a small bird sheltering from the cold, perhaps a rodent testing the stability of old wood, perhaps even the crack and release of frost settling on the roof. Your mind, floating loosely between thought and dream, entertains all possibilities at once. You picture a tiny sparrow fluffed against the cold, feet tapping softly as it edges along the beam. You picture frost cracking in the pattern of a creature walking. You picture a household spirit, small, mischievous, half-real, nudging at the rafters with tiny knuckles to see if anyone inside is still awake. The image makes your drowsy lips curve faintly, a smile so small it barely reaches the muscles of your face, and you let it linger just long enough to warm the edges of your drifting thoughts. The sound fades. The cottage returns to breathing. The night folds over the rafters like a heavy wool cloak. You feel again the animal heat through the wall, steady and slow, like a giant heartbeat pulsing through the timber, and the warmth radiates into your back in a way that seems to pull the last tension from your spine. A sleeper beside you shifts closer, their knee brushing your thigh before settling, and the contact sends a soft ripple of warmth under the blanket, tightening the cocoon around your torso until the cold cannot find its way in. Your breath deepens again, sliding back into the rhythm of the room, the steady rise and fall of bellies under blankets, the faint hiss of exhale against wool, the occasional soft grunt from the stable, weaving together into one continuous murmur, soothing and ancient. And just as you begin to yield again to the downward pull of sleep, another sensation reaches you. Not sound, not movement, but warmth, rising from the shared bedding in a slow, spreading wave, as though so many bodies pressed together have finally reached their peak of collective heat, creating a soft, radiant cocoon that wraps around your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your spine, your legs, until your entire body feels suspended in a warm, breathing cradle. It is the moment medieval sleepers wait for, the moment when warmth becomes stable, when the bedding becomes a den, when the cold finally retreats to the farthest corners of the room and concedes the night. Your body loosens in response, your limbs heavy with comfort, your thoughts unraveling into long, effortless strands, and the sensation of drifting returns, not downward this time, but outward, as though you are dissolving gently into the shared warmth, becoming part of the great sleeping shape the household has formed. Your awareness dimming, your breath slowing, your senses softening, you slip closer to the threshold where dreams will begin to form their own quiet stories, shaped by warmth, straw, smoke, and the hum of winter life. Something shifts, not outside, not in the rafters, but within the warmth itself, right beside you, a soft pressure gathering against your arm like a hesitant tide edging toward the shore, and in your half-dreaming state you sense the change before you fully register it, a presence small and warm and alive pressing gently into the blanket near your ribs. At first it feels like the simple movement of a sleeper adjusting their weight, the kind of subtle motion that passes unnoticed in a crowded winter bed, yet there is a difference in it, a delicacy, a lighter touch, as if someone or something has crept closer with slow, careful steps, slipping into the shared warmth with the caution of a creature that does not want to disturb the nest. The pressure increases slightly. A gentle nudge, and then a soft vibration trembles against your arm. Not a sound exactly, but a tiny rhythmic quiver that travels through the straw and into your sleeve. It is the unmistakable tremor of purring, low and tentative, like a lullaby whispered by a creature half asleep. A cat. A small, wiry, winter-hardened cottage cat, edging into the warmest part of the bedding. You do not open your eyes, but your drowsy mind recognizes the pattern instantly. The soft pad of paws distributing their weight. The careful placement of a body trying not to disrupt the fragile balance of warmth. The faint hum deep in its chest as it sees an opportunity to claim a little comfort for itself. Cats in medieval cottages sleep where the warmth is, and they slip into beds as quietly as spirits slipping through doorways. The little body presses closer, curling itself into the hollow near your ribs, tucking its paws beneath its chest in the universal gesture of a creature settling into security, its purr deepening into a steady, soothing rumble that vibrates through the blanket like a second heartbeat. You feel the warmth spread from its small frame, filling the space where the cold had lingered, the effect so gentle and natural that it seems impossible to separate the cat's heat from your own. Its fur brushes lightly against your sleeve, coarse from winter hunting yet warm with the life pulsing beneath it. No one else stirs. No one else notices. This tiny visitor has joined your side of the nest alone, choosing you in the quiet way animals choose warmth and safety, instinctively, silently, without question. The purr grows steadier, richer, each vibration blending with the deep breathing of the household and the slow pulse of the animals behind the wall, until the entire soundscape of the cottage feels like a layered lullaby. Human breath, animal breath, ember sighs, winter wind, and this soft, steady rumble humming against your arm. Your breathing synchronizes with it before you realize it. Each inhale timed to the rhythm of the purr. Each exhale easing your body a little deeper into the bedding. The warmth of the cat soaks into you like heat from a smooth stone, comforting and ancient in its simplicity, and the weight of its small body anchors you in place without trapping you. A living reminder that even in the hardest winters, companionship comes from unexpected corners, sometimes from creatures who sleep between rafters, hunt in the dark and choose their humans only when it suits them. The cat shifts once more, a delicate movement as it tucks its head against your side, and the purr softens into a slow, contented hum, the straw beneath it rustling with each gentle vibration. Your eyes, though closed, feel heavier, your thoughts blurring into long, warm streaks of sensation rather than ideas, your body aligning itself fully with the warmth around you, losing its boundaries as it merges with the shared heat of family, animals, and now this tiny nocturnal guardian curled against your ribs. You are drifting, finally, fully, irreversibly into the deep layer of sleep that medieval nights carve for those who accept their harshness and gather their rituals around them like shields. You drift deeper, your thoughts dissolving into warmth and vibration, when that faint breath of cold brushes the edge of your awareness like a fingertip, trailing across your skin. Not inside the bed, not from a restless sleeper, but from somewhere near the outer rim of the cottage, a subtle change in temperature that your winter-trained senses detect even through layers of wool and half-sleep. It is not dramatic. It is not alarming. It is simply there, a thread of colder air slipping across the floorboards, faint as a whisper. Your eyelids do not lift, but instinct sharpens in the background of your mind, the same instinct every medieval peasant carries in their bones from the moment they survive their first winter. You sense the source almost immediately, a shift at the door, not enough to suggest danger, but enough to let in a sliver of the night's breath. Someone must have turned in their sleep, tugging the blanket pile near the threshold, disturbing the careful padding of cloth and straw you all stuffed around the frame earlier. Or perhaps the wind changed direction, pressing its weight against the outer planks with enough persistence to make the latch flex by the tiniest fraction. The cold drifts across the floor, sliding low like a curious creature sniffing for warmth. It brushes your ankles first, just a touch, a reminder that the outside world still exists, before gliding along the ground toward the hearth, where the last ember glows in its cradle like a tired eye, refusing to close. Under ordinary circumstances, the draft would pull you toward wakefulness. But tonight, the combined warmth of the group, the steady pulse of the animals through the wall, and the small cat curled against your ribs hold the cold at bay. The warmth does not break, it simply shifts, reshaping itself to compensate, like a single organism adjusting its weight to protect a vulnerable limb. The child pressed against your knees instinctively curls closer, their small feet seeking refuge beneath your blanket. The sleeper behind you exhales a slow, soft breath that drifts down the back of your neck, adding another layer of heat to the cocoon. Even the cat responds, not waking fully, but pressing deeper into your side with a tiny adjusting push, its purr dipping slightly before resuming in a richer, more grounded rhythm. The cold slips across the floorboards again, probing, ghost-like, but the warmth answers it, stubborn, collective, alive. You feel your mind registering the intrusion in a dreamlike way, recognizing the pattern from countless winter nights. The cold tries and the sleepers shift and the warmth holds. It is an instinctive choreography older than memory, practiced across generations until the body learns to respond without thought, wrapping limbs closer, tucking blankets deeper, folding into each other like birds huddling in a storm. The draft thins. The cold retreats. The cottage exhales. A soft creak follows, a board flexing under the wind's retreat, or perhaps the latch settling back into its notch, or the roof adjusting to the changing pressure outside, and the sound ripples through the room like the cottage sighing in relief. Your thoughts drift with it, loose and heavy and warm, pulling you deeper into that hazy twilight where consciousness no longer tries to hold shape. The purr at your side slows into a deep, steady vibration. Someone's breathing joins with yours in a shared rhythm. The animal heat behind the wall thickens until it feels like a second blanket across your spine. The cold no longer feels like an intruder. It feels distant, irrelevant, defeated by the combined stubborn warmth of everything alive inside the cottage. Your body softens again, your jaw slackens, and your mind slips lower into the quiet dark, feeling carried, held, protected by all the small forces working together to keep you warm. The sound unfurls slowly, so soft it seems woven into the warm darkness itself, a long, low, steady exhale that doesn't belong to any human sleeper, nor to the small cat curled against your ribs, nor to the shifting straw beneath you. It is deeper, broader, carrying a resonance that vibrates faintly through the floor and into your bones, as though the very earth beneath the cottage has decided to breathe. At first, your drowsy mind folds the sound into the general murmur of the room, the soft snores, the rustling straw, the faint settling of the rafters, but something about it lingers, not loud enough to wake you, but distinct enough to catch the drifting edge of your awareness. It is a sound that belongs to large, slow-moving warmth, a creature whose breath fills space with certainty rather than fragility. And then you recognize it. The deep, peaceful sigh of a cow in the stable. The breath travels through the wooden wall, through the packed clay, through the frame of the cottage itself, carrying with it a gentle, steady warmth that spreads into the room like a tide of reassurance. For a moment, the line between your space and the animals dissolves entirely. You can almost feel the cow's slow heartbeat pressed faintly through the timber, the rhythmic rise and fall of its massive chest as it settles fully into sleep. The sensation is calming beyond reason. It is ancient, primal, the comfort of knowing that something big and warm and living stands guard in the cold. The heat radiating from the stable wall deepens by a subtle degree, enveloping your back like a hand placed gently across your shoulders. The small cat beside you stirs just enough to flick the tip of its tail against your elbow, then sinks instantly back into its purr. The child near your knees shifts, curling closer to your calf with a soft, sleepy whimper, as though the cow's exhale has soothed them too. The cottage feels fuller, safer, a single warm organism breathing together through the winter night. Your mind drifts with the sensation, sinking deeper into the warmth. The cowslip's breath blending with the faint crackle of the last ember, the soft rustle of straw, the overlapping rhythms of human sleepers. You feel suspended between layers of warmth. The group bundle at your front, the animal heat at your back, the sleeping cat pressed against your ribs, the thick layers of your clothing trapping every borrowed scrap of heat, and the blanket that holds it all together like a winter cocoon. Your breathing slows to match the deep rhythm coming through the wall, long and even, as though the animal's calm has travelled directly into your lungs. Your chest loosens. Your mind softens. Every part of you drifts towards sleep, in a slow, irresistible slide. And it is in this softened state, wrapped in warmth from all sides, that another sound rises, not loud, not startling, but close, very close, only inches from your ear. A tiny breath, a warm puff of air brushing gently against your hairline. Someone in the bundle has shifted, their face now tucked near your shoulder, their breath light and steady and comforting, the kind of instinctive closeness that humans share only in the deepest cold. The warmth of that breath blends with the cowslip's distant sigh, the catslip's purr, the fading embersip's glow, and your own slow inhale forming one seamless harmony that pulls you deeper, 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 until the last thread of awareness becomes thin as smoke. Just before something else stirs at the far edge of the cottage, faint enough to be part of a dream, yet real enough to tug gently on your drifting senses. The faint stir at the far edge of the cottage drifts into your awareness like a thin ripple across still water, subtle, almost shy, the kind of movement that could easily be mistaken for a dream, if your senses weren't tuned by a lifetime of winter nights. It begins as the softest disturbance in the straw near the outer wall, a tiny shifting whisper that travels upward through the packed earth and into the wooden frame of the cottage. It is not loud enough to alert the fully awake mind. It is precisely loud enough to reach the half-sleeping ear. Your body does not tense. It simply listens, instinctively, the way your ancestors did for generations. The sound grows clearer, not larger, just more distinct, like a small creature settling into a more comfortable position. You picture it without opening your eyes. A mouse, probably, or perhaps two, tucking themselves deeper into their own nest of dry stalks hidden between the wall planks. A brief scurry follows, light and quick, so faint it blends into the straw beneath the sleeping bodies, and then a soft rhythmic nibbling begins, gentle, repetitive, the small crunching sound of tiny teeth working through a kernel of grain or a leftover crumb dropped earlier in the day. The noise is not threatening. It is part of the winter soundtrack. In the Middle Ages, no one expects a cottage to be free of small companions. The warmth draws them inside, just as it draws the cat, just as it draws you. Somewhere in the haze of your drifting mind, you recall an old villager once saying that mice are simply little winter neighbours, invited or not, and his tone had been so resigned and so amused that you can't help but feel a faint smile forming even now, in your half-dreaming state. The cat pressed against your ribs hears it too. Its purring shifts for a heartbeat, dipping low, the vibration tightening like a drawn bowstring. But it does not move. Not yet. The warmth matters more than the chase. The mouse continues its tiny feast. The cat resumes its steady hum. The world settles again, and just as you sink back into the warmth, feeling the sound slipping away into the soft folds of night, another sensation touches your senses, something even gentler, even lighter, a faint pressure brushing over the top of your blanket near your shoulder, so soft you could mistake it for a drifting piece of straw, settling from the rafters. But it lingers. Just long enough. Just warm enough. A small hand, perhaps the child nestled against your legs, has reached up in their sleep, fingertips grazing your shoulder, before collapsing into rest again. The touch is wordless, instinctive, a small seeking for warmth and safety in the dark. It stays there only a moment before their hand slides down against your side, their breath settling into small, even puffs that warm the wool near your flank. That tiny human contact, paired with the distant nibbling of mice, the purring cat, the sighing cow, the breath of sleepers, and the slow, steady hum of the night outside, forms a constellation of warmth and life so complete, so deeply woven, that your drifting mind finally releases its last hold on waking. Your breath deepens. Your limbs soften. Your thoughts dissolve like smoke rising from an ember. The soft, rhythmic knock brushes against the edge of your fading awareness, so distant, so muffled, so gently patterned, that for a moment your drifting mind mistakes it for part of your own heartbeat, an internal echo rather than a sound delivered by the winter world outside. But the rhythm continues, steady and deliberate, separated by small pauses long enough to feel intentional, as though someone or something keeps testing the silence with slow, patient taps. Knock, pause, knock, pause. The sound is faint enough that none of the sleepers around you stir. Even the cat remains deeply nestled against your ribs, its purr uninterrupted, the vibrations rolling through your arm like a lullaby. The cow on the other side of the wall exhales with a soft grunt, unconcerned. The child curled near your legs lets out a sleepy sigh and shifts closer, their foot brushing the back of your calf. Whatever makes that knocking, it is too gentle to disturb anyone fully. But in your half-dreaming state, everything becomes sharper at the edges, more symbolic, more mysterious. Your thoughts drift toward the door, toward the idea of something standing outside brushing cold fingers against the old wooden planks. But the knock doesn't come from the height of a human hand. It is lower, closer to the bottom of the wall, the kind of sound made at the level of knees or the lower ribs, maybe even the ground. Wind, snow falling from the thatch, a loose shutter moving with the pressure of ice. Your mind offers all these explanations, slow and unfocused as they drift in and out of thought. But the knock continues with just enough rhythm to feel like a creature testing the wood. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. A long silence, the kind that swallows thought. You settle deeper into the blankets, still half aware, warmth wrapped around you like a cocoon. The straw beneath you murmurs softly as you breathe. You feel the steady weight of the cat, the warmth of your family, the subtle radiation of heat from the stable animals. You are protected on all sides. And so, instead of fear, a quiet curiosity stirs. It is a medieval curiosity, practical, instinctive, shaped by a world where animals and spirits and weather all share the darkness. Your mind drifts to possibilities. Perhaps a dog seeking warmth. Perhaps a fox sniffing for scraps beneath the eaves. Perhaps a curious creature nudging its nose against the cold wall, wondering about the heat pulse it senses on the other side. The silence deepens, folds in on itself, settles. Your breath grows long again, slow, warm. Your muscles relax. Sleep pulls harder. Just as your thoughts unravel once more into soft, drifting shapes, the sound returns, but not as a knock this time, more like a slow dragging noise, a faint brush against the outer wall, like something shifting outside, pawing at the frozen earth or nudging aside old straw clinging to the foundation. It lasts only a second, barely more than a whisper. Then nothing. No movement outside, no wind, no knock. Just the steady warmth inside the cottage, the layered breathing of your family, the purr of the cat, the low rumble of animals behind the wall, filling the silence until the outside world fades completely from your mind. Your awareness thins, stretches, dissolves, and you begin to slip at last into full, heavy, dream-fed sleep. The sound comes from within the cottage itself, a faint shifting of weight somewhere near the central hearth, so soft you might have missed it if you had been fully awake. But in this twilight state, half submerged in warmth, half afloat in drifting consciousness, the noise brushes gently across your senses, a a small reminder that the night inside is alive in ways that do not require light or wakefulness, and you feel rather than hear the slow, deliberate movement of someone rising from the straw, not with urgency or fear, but with the quiet instinct of a person who has lived too many winters to let the fire die entirely. And as your thoughts stretch thin like warm smoke, you picture an older family member sitting up slowly, rubbing stiff joints, leaning close to the embers, their shadow bending forward in a single curved line before their hands begin, the careful ritual of coaxing the fire back toward life. You do not open your eyes, but you sense the dance of it, the soft scrape of ash being shifted aside, the quiet sigh of the poker pushing a piece of wood into a new position, the low exhale of breath aimed gently into the heart of the coals, the faint rustle of straw as the person settles nearer to the heat, and then that small miracle of winter nights, the moment the ember's glow blooms a little brighter, spreading over the room in a fragile wash of gold that reaches the sleeping faces around you like a blessing carried on warm light. The cat feels it first, its purring shifting into a deeper rumble, as it stretches its paws in a tiny arc against your ribs before settling again, and the warmth of the rekindled flame leaks slowly across the floor, brushing your toes and shins, blending with the animal heat at your back until the chill that once crept beneath the door becomes nothing more than a forgotten draft in a house determined to survive the night. The fire murmurs as it awakens, its voice soft and grateful, and you feel your mind floating gently towards sleep once more, your breaths longer now, your limbs heavier, your body loosened by the simple reassurance that someone is tending the flame, someone is awake enough to keep the darkness at bay, someone is performing the same quiet duty their parents and grandparents performed in winters stretching back beyond memory. The ember light flickers through your closed eyelids in soft pulses, each one fainter than the last, as your awareness surrenders its grip and sinks deeper. You feel the child near your legs curl closer, tucking tiny cold feet beneath your blanket, and you shift just enough to make room without truly moving, letting the warmth settle again like a second skin around your chest, your arms, your spine, your neck, and somewhere behind you the cow exhales in a long, slow breath, a great gentle sound that travels through the wall and settles into the straw beneath you like the night itself, giving a sigh of contentment. Everything inside the cottage settles into a single unified rhythm: breath, warmth, straw, fire, animal, human, all woven together into one shared cocoon of survival. And you feel your mind slide across that threshold where images lose their boundaries and merge into soft dream shapes. A field of frozen grass glinting in moonlight, a trail of footprints leading to a warm doorway, a slow burning fire holding back the dark, a cluster of sleeping bodies wrapped in wool and trust and necessity. Your breathing slows into the deep, even cadence of true rest, the kind that comes only after the rituals of winter have been honored, the layering of clothing, the tending of embers, the gathering of bodies, the quiet handling of small discomforts, the rituals of warmth and patience and shared presence that carry you through the long cold hours of the season. You feel the cottage hold you, the roof low and familiar above your head, the earth firm beneath the straw, the walls humming with the faint warmth of life on both sides. And as the last strands of consciousness slip away, you understand in some quiet, instinctive way that this, not comfort, not softness, not silence, but this woven tapestry of survival, is how poor peasants endured freezing medieval winters, not through luxury but through closeness, not through architecture but through community, not through abundance but through the patient endurance of bodies sharing heat in a world too cold to face alone. Wrapped in all these small miracles of warmth, your breath deepening into the slow rhythm of the second sleep, you drift at last into a deep, unbroken darkness, where the fire hums like a guardian, the animals breathe like distant drums, and the night outside retreats to the farthest edge of everything you know, leaving you held, cocooned, and utterly safe until morning.